Hello and welcome. We are sitting here at GOTO Chicago 2014 and I have the pleasure to interview Whitten and LeRoux. My name is Aina Corey, I'm part of the PC, and these guys have been part in creating Phonegap and also some other nifty things afterwards and before.
Yeah.
So I have some questions for you guys. So my first question would be, when you think of Phonegap, is there anything you regret doing?
Oh, we're starting with that one. I have some, actually. It's not necessarily a regret, but it's a reflection. Our motivation with working on it was really to further the web. And we wanted to see web development flourish. And I often ask myself, like, did we help the web or did we help native? And I'm not opposed to helping native, but I want to see open development and open collaboration and open tools. And it's been really great to see how Phonegap's matured in Cordova and how that's all gone, and it's been really cool. So it gives me like comfort, but I think we helped put a lot of apps in the App Store, and I question like maybe a better way to put it was that, not to belabor the point, but was maybe there wasn't enough emphasis on running on the web in the beginning.
Yeah.
And that, which is kind of what we're working on now more, right? Is just like go to the web first and then also get in the app stores if you want to, right?
Yeah, I echo those thoughts. We initially created this sort of fancy compiler, and it doesn't target the browser. So we always assumed that people would be writing the code for the browser and then they would use this compiler after, but instead they're using the compiler first, and hitting the browser is an afterthought. We're fixing that. We're adding the browser as a platform now. When we started to do that, we realized that we added a lot of stuff that really distanced both Cordova and Phonegap from the web. And so we consider those bugs, not features. And so we're fixing it. And we're getting back to that. The one other thing, when the first second you said, is there anything you regret? I regret all the XML that we used. But there was no other way. That was what it made sense at the time. We chose using the widget spec for our config files, and there's a lot of XML in there, and I just wish we had chosen JSON from the beginning. But
was that even an option?
It was kind of an early option. It's funny because early Phonegap had JSON parsing built in, and there wasn't native libraries for this stuff at the time. And we were actually using Douglas Crockford's JSON libraries at the time. You remember this?
Yeah.
And I remember IBM got really upset because Crockford's libraries didn't have an Apache or MIT compatible license. He basically had this file.
Do no evil.
It said do no evil. And so we wrote him and said, can we change this? IBM's not super stoked about it. So he changed it to do no evil unless you're IBM. Which was kind of awesome. You have to give Douglas Crockford props for that.
Yeah.
It's not a bad story.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
So maybe it takes me to the next question is, what are you doing now? What's occupying you now? If we start with you.
Yeah, well, so I started a company with Rob Ellis, who was part of the Phonegap story from the beginning as well. And we kind of we reflected on this, right? And we wanted to just like publish on the web. We wanted to make that as easy as possible. So we built Harp, which is a static web server that does pre-compiling for you, just on the fly. And we've offered that on a platform that lets you deploy through Dropbox. And so we're trying to lower the barrier for publishing and take away like all the configuration that exists right now, especially for front end. There seems to be a trend towards like really heavy tailored configuration. And we think like most of that can be done through conventions, so that's what we're working on.
Making it easier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all Phonegap philosophy too, so it's all open source, free software. Just to throw that out there, it's not just your company's gig.
Yeah.
And I use it too. It's good stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to add about what you're doing now?
Oh, the big thing for us these past few months, there's sort of two prongs. So we realized that command line tooling is great. Everyone likes it, but maybe not everyone in our audience wants to use the command line. I don't really believe this, but it could be true. So we've been working. So we've been working on apps, believe it or not. Yeah. So we built apps. They're in the App Store for iOS, Android, and Windows Phone, soon BlackBerry. you install an app on your phone, and we have a GUI desktop tool coming out soon, and it pairs your desktop to your phone, and you just write code, and it refreshes on your device. Previously, if you wanted to do this, you had to install the iOS SDK, install the Android SDK, install VMs, install Windows Phone, provision your phone, all this crazy stuff. And this takes that like 1 day setup down to like 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. So that makes kind of our front-end designer audience really happy, and we think that's going to be a pretty big success. And then on the flip side, we discovered in the last year that the enterprise really likes Phonegap. They're building lots of hybrid apps out there. And we sort of did a survey of all the Adobe stuff, and Adobe has a lot of stuff. One of the things that we have, one of the assets is Adobe Analytics, which used to be known as Omniture. And so we're putting together an offering that's coming out at the end of this month called Phonegap Enterprise, and it's basically Phonegap with Omniture Analytics baked in, and our Adobe Experience Manager, which is a content management solution that lets you update your apps on the fly. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So when will we see that?
Soon.
Okay.
Well, we announced it in March. I think this is a real enterprising thing. I think code freezes at the end of the month, and I'm like, oh, do I get to stop writing code then?
Yeah.
I don't think that's actually what happens at code freeze. So, soon.
Yeah, okay, soonish. Thank you.
No, it's an interesting perspective, and like for us, we looked at that question about like front-end developers and designers and whether they want to be on the command line or not. Mm-hmm. And I think what we're learning is that like good tools are good tools, and like there's a time and place for both, like both the command line and like GUI, and with that being abstracted. But we actually have been kind of pleasantly surprised in a way that it's the command line's being embraced more by designers and by front-end developers, and we're seeing
Totally.
like Grunt and Gulp and all these cool front-end tools coming out that are really maturing extremely quickly, and it's kind of inspiring. And when we worked on the hard platform, like we made the assumption that it wasn't going to go that way, that it was going to be very GUI based, and people wanted to use they wanted to have a visual GUI, but I think both are needed, both are necessary, and if applications are architected correctly, you can offer both, right?
Yeah, it's interesting because we're seeing the same thing. A lot of front-end developers who used to sort of eschew the idea of touching a command line are now becoming, pretty dangerous in there themselves, which is
Question
different.
is it the same people, or is it because the new front-end developers are actually from another age, if you can say like that?
Yeah.
That they have been using command line in the games that they play.
Yeah,
Online,
I wish I knew
for
the
instance.
answer to that.
I don't know the answer either. I mean, like you look at Grunt, and I think it's pushing over something crazy, like 250,000 downloads a month, and so Grunt's a front-end developer tool. So it indicates that these people are out there and they're using it. But I think it is the new generation of web development. It's like it's no longer a web designer or a web developer. It's somewhere in between.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a brave new world. Who knows?
I'm hoping to see where it goes and what the answer to that question is.
And speaking about the future,
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
if we take us forward to 2017, what will the mobile web development look like then?
Yeah. Well, every time I attempt to make these predictions, like
We're off by years.
we're off by.
In what
quite a
direction?
few. Well, I think we saw Phonegap being a very ephemeral tool.
I thought it was a hack project.
Yeah.
It'd be gone in a couple of years.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, that was always the intent.
Okay.
We'd
Yeah.
demonstrate you could use web tech. Everyone would go, why would I bother with this other stuff? And we'd go away.
Yeah.
Here we are 6 years later, still going strong.
I can tell you what I'd like to see.
Yes, do that.
I'd like to see this the way that the web is consumed, to kind of learn a little bit what people like about installing apps, and just how being online or offline shouldn't matter quite so much to the web. Mm-hmm. And just the URL represents where the source of the program is, right?
Whether or not it's being loaded dynamically or
Yeah.
perhaps once off of the server and then additionally from there from
That's
the local
right.
machine.
Yeah, and so I think that offline storage needs to mature, and like the app cache manifest especially. And there's people working on this, and I think that it'd be nice if there was a greater emphasis on that particular issue from my perspective. But I know like there's been a lot of progress made in this area, especially recently. It's moving so fast.
Yeah, they just landed. It's the service worker spec in Firefox, which starts to address these issues, where you get more control over the network layer and you can do your own caching and delta updating type of stuff. I think it's interesting because we see a lot of people now treat the App Store as the primary discovery model for their experience in a computer. And it's terrifying to watch a child use the App Store. Like a 3-year-old is pretty good at a computer all of a sudden, and they don't know how to read as far as I can tell. So how they're doing this, I have no idea. But they're in there and they're adding apps and they start playing games, and it's like, whoa, what's happening?
Buying stuff all the time.
Yeah, buying in-app purchases.
Yeah.
So what that sort of taught me was, whoa, the web is really an important asset, but we kind of have conflated Google with the web, and Google is kind of the app store of the web. And so there's a bit of a discovery issue here that no one's really talking about, but the app store is the discovery place that this is where you find your programs, and if it's on the web, then you go to Google to find your programs. What is the open equivalent of this? I mean, everybody wants to be the person who is the purveyor of all computing experience for sure, but is that a good idea? And is this truly a commons or not? And those are just challenging questions without a good answer.
Yeah. Should we leave them hanging there?
Yeah, I think so.
Get in your self-driving car and tell me in the future what happens.
Thank you very much for joining us, and hope to see you again sometime.
Well, thanks for having me.
Goodbye.